London, December 17th, 1889. The air was damp with fog, curling through the narrow alleys and gas-lit streets like a whisper from the past. In the heart of Kensington, where grand houses stood like silent watchers, one window on the third floor of the Fairmont estate flickered with dim candlelight. Isabella Fairmont stood there, her figure barely visible through the lace curtains. She was only 19, yet carried the poise of a woman twice her age. Something about her always felt out of place, as if she didn't fully belong in this time. This is not just a story. It's a mystery buried in time. Subscribe for more dark tales like this and tell us in the comments. Do you know Isabella Fairmont? That morning, Isabella wrote a final entry in her worn leather diary. The silence feels heavier today. I think someone's watching again. It was the kind of note that to any outsider would seem poetic, but to those who knew her, it carried weight. She left the house without a word, not even telling her maid. No suitcase, no gloves, no shawl to fight the cold. Hours passed. By nightfall, her mother panicked. Servants were sent across town. Letters were rushed to family friends. The police were reluctantly called in, though missing young women from wealthy families often stirred gossip before concern. In the shadows of the city, whispers began. She saw something she shouldn't have. They warned her. Maybe she wasn't taken. Maybe she vanished. On purpose. But the Fairmonts believed otherwise, and Isabella's disappearance would soon grow into something much bigger, a tangle of secrets, silence, and sinister forces that no one could explain. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. 3 days before Isabella vanished, she had begun drawing her curtains earlier than usual, not because the daylight hurt her eyes, but because she was hiding from something, or someone. The Fairmont house was large, full of ornate chandeliers and creaking staircases, but Isabella had started avoiding most of it. She kept to her room, writing endlessly in her diary and locking her door even when she was alone. Her mother once knocked, only to be met with silence. When the door finally opened, Isabella stood there pale, eyes tired, lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but didn't. That evening, their butler, Mr. Wexley, claimed he saw a man in a black coat standing across the street, staring at Isabella's window. When he moved toward the gate, the man disappeared into the fog. No footprints, no trace. Inside the house, something felt off. Clocks ticked out of sync. The dog refused to go near Isabella's room, and once, the maid swore she heard whispering from behind Isabella's locked door, though Isabella insisted she had been reading alone. The family dismissed these events as stress. The Fairmonts, after all, were a family of reputation. Scandal, superstition, or madness had no place in their world. But Isabella, she was changing. She no longer laughed at garden parties. Her piano sat untouched, and one morning she burned several pages from her diary in the fireplace, watching the flames rise with hollow eyes. Whatever she was hiding, she was trying to destroy the evidence. What had Isabella seen? What was she trying to protect? The questions would grow louder in the days to come, but the answers, like the fog outside her window, would remain just out of reach. The Fairmont estate had stood for nearly a century, its east wing long abandoned after a fire in 1862. No one spoke much about it. The door at the end of the long corridor remained locked, its key lost or perhaps hidden on purpose. But 2 days before Isabella vanished, Mrs. Fairmont heard soft footsteps coming from that wing. Not the loud creaks of wood settling, but deliberate steps, and a soft knock, coming from inside the locked room. The staff refused to check it. "Old pipes," they muttered. "Nothing more." But Isabella, she had grown curious. That night, she was seen standing in the hallway, staring at the door, her candle flickering in her hand. The maid who spotted her said Isabella was whispering, though no one else was there. The next morning, she asked her father an unusual question. Why did we seal the east wing? He froze, then simply said, because some things should remain closed. Later that evening, Isabella tried to access the old library archives. She was looking for something old, something lost. She found a sketch. It was a portrait of a woman, dated 1843. The resemblance was disturbing. Same eyes, same soft features, same necklace Isabella now wore. But the name beneath it was not Isabella Fairmont. It was Isadora Fairmont, a woman who had died young, mysteriously, in the East Wing. That night, Isabella didn't sleep. Her candlelight flickered past midnight, and her diary entry was brief. I saw her. She was in the mirror, and she wore my face. Was it a dream, a warning, a haunting, or something far older than anyone dared admit? The house wasn't just holding memories. It was hiding something far worse. And Isabella had started to uncover it. 2 nights before her disappearance, Isabella moved her vanity mirror to face the window. When asked why, she simply replied, "Because I want to see what follows me in the reflection." Her tone wasn't fearful. It was resigned. The mirror had once belonged to her great-grandmother, passed down through generations. But since childhood, Isabella claimed the glass didn't just reflect light, it reflected memory, and sometimes things that weren't there. That evening, the maid Ruth entered Isabella's room and froze. The mirror, though no one was near it, had faint condensation, as if someone had exhaled across the surface. Written in that mist was a single word: return. Ruth ran from the room. Isabella, however, stared at the message calmly and wiped it away without a word. Later, while brushing her hair, she noticed something strange. In the mirror's reflection, her room appeared different. The wallpaper was faded, the furniture had changed, and behind her, just for a moment, stood a woman in old-fashioned mourning clothes, her hands resting gently on Isabella's shoulders. But when Isabella turned, no one was there. Her diary from that night read, "She keeps showing me things, rooms I've never seen, people I've never met, and yet I remember them, like I've lived this before." She was beginning to question her own mind, or worse, reality itself. Meanwhile, Mr. Fairmont, growing uneasy, summoned an old family friend, Reverend Alton, a quiet man once involved in matters no longer spoken of, matters of spirits, family curses, and buried sins. He arrived the next morning with a single warning. If she's seen the mirror's truth, she must not be left alone again. But it was too late. Isabella had already begun slipping between the present and something much older, something the mirror had waited decades to reveal. The Fairmont house had always made noise, the groan of old pipes, the scratch of tree branches against the windows, the hum of wind through the chimney. But now, the sounds had changed. They became intentional. One early morning, Ruth the maid paused in the upstairs hallway. She placed her hand on the faded floral wallpaper and whispered, "Miss Isabella, are you awake?" There was no reply, but she felt something. A vibration, a sound under the wallpaper, like a breath. That same night, Isabella told her mother something chilling. "I think the house is trying to speak." Her voice had grown distant, almost echoing, as if she weren't fully there. She pointed to the wall near her bed. "Listen closely," she said. Mrs. Fairmont leaned in, and for a brief moment, so brief she convinced herself it was her imagination, she thought she heard a voice behind the walls. "It's not over." Isabella had started drawing symbols on paper. She claimed they came to her in dreams, circular shapes, eyes, broken keys, and a spiral with a line through it. She didn't know what they meant, only that they needed to be remembered. Her diary became more erratic. There's a story inside this house, a memory sealed inside wood and stone. Every room remembers, every hallway whispers. Mr. Fairmont, now visibly disturbed, ordered the east wing to be sealed completely. No one was to speak of the fire. No one was to mention the year 1862. But Isabella didn't stop. She kept sketching, listening, waiting. And then, one afternoon, she uncovered something hidden behind the wallpaper in her room, a faint outline of a door where no door should be, a door that wasn't visible unless the light hit it just right. Was it real, or part of the house's growing illusion? Whatever it was, it had been hidden deliberately. And now, it wanted to be found. Isabella stared at the faint outline for nearly an hour, candle in hand. The hidden door was only visible under the flickering light, its edges drawn in old paint, the wood swollen from age. There was no handle, no keyhole, just the shape of something meant to stay forgotten. But her instinct said otherwise. That evening, she returned with a dull knife and carefully scraped along the seams. The wallpaper peeled like dead skin, revealing strange carvings etched directly into the wood. Not words, not symbols, but names. Some had faded completely, but two were clear. Isadora Fairmont, Edgar Alton. She recognized neither until she remembered the Reverend who had visited. Reverend Alton, his family name. This door was older than anyone in the house admitted. Isabella didn't tell anyone. She knew they wouldn't believe her. But she made a decision, one she scribbled into her diary that night. The door found me. That means I'm meant to open it. Whether it's memory, madness, or something else, I must see what's behind it. She began behaving differently. More distant, more curious, speaking less and listening more. At dinner, she asked her father an unsettling question. "Have you ever heard the walls breathe?" He dropped his fork. Later that night, a loud thud echoed through the hallways, as if something heavy had fallen. But when the staff checked Isabella's room, she was sitting calmly, staring at the hidden door, her candlelight dancing across her wide eyes. The next day, Reverend Alton returned. But this time, Isabella refused to see him. "She won't come down," said Ruth. "She says the door is waking up." The Reverend paled. "If she opens it," he whispered to Mr. Fairmont, "she won't be the same." That door was sealed not just with wood, but with silence, death, and vow. But the house no longer respected silence. And neither did Isabella. That night, Isabella awoke to a rhythmic sound beneath her bed. Tap, tap, drag. She sat up, heart pounding, listening as the sound circled the room, then faded, as if whatever it was had sunk beneath the floor. She lit her candle and stepped onto the creaking wooden boards. Everything was still. But then she noticed something. One of the planks near the wall where the hidden door lay was slightly raised, barely noticeable unless you knew to look. Isabella pried it open. Inside the hollow space was a box wrapped in rotting velvet. She lifted it with trembling hands. The air grew colder around her. She opened the box. Inside were three things: a locket containing a faded photograph of a woman who looked eerily like Isabella, a letter, water-damaged and half-burned, addressed only as, "To the last Fairmont daughter," and a black iron key shaped like a serpent swallowing its own tail. The key was freezing to the touch. The letter read, "If you have found this, the silence has broken. Do not trust the mirrors. Do not speak to her reflection. And most of all, do not listen when the house begins to call your name." Isabella held the key tightly. It felt right, like it had always belonged to her hand. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. Downstairs, the grandfather clock stopped ticking at exactly 3:17 a.m., the same time the fire had started in the East Wing, years ago. Mrs. Fairmont claimed to see a figure in the hallway mirror, a pale woman in black, gliding past, her eyes hollow, her lips mouthing a single word: return. By morning, Isabella had made up her mind. She would open the door, because she had already gone too far. And the house, her house, had begun to remember her. Just before midnight, Isabella returned to her room with only a candle and the serpent key clenched in her hand. The house was unusually silent. No creaks, no wind. Even the clocks had stopped ticking. She approached the hidden door, the one only she seemed able to see, and slid the iron key along the edges. At first, nothing happened, but then she felt a faint vibration. The wall pulsed like something alive. With trembling fingers, she pressed the key against the center of the carvings. A slow click echoed through the room. The door cracked open, revealing complete darkness beyond. No floor, no walls, just a deep velvet blackness that seemed to swallow the candlelight. And yet, Isabella stepped inside. Her foot found solid ground, but it didn't feel like wood or stone. It felt soft, almost like ash. The door closed behind her, and for a moment, the only sound was her breath. Then came the whispers, soft at first, then louder. She's returned. She remembers. She opens what should stay sealed. The passage ahead slowly revealed itself, illuminated by an unseen light. Walls lined with old portraits, all of them women. All of them looked like her. Some smiling, some weeping, some scratched out entirely. At the end of the corridor stood a large mirror covered with a heavy crimson cloth. Isabella reached out, but before she could lift the fabric, she heard it. A voice, her own, calling her name from behind. Isabella. She turned, but no one was there, only shadows. Writhing. The candle flickered violently. The portraits now had their eyes closed, all of them, every last one. And in the distance, from somewhere deeper in the dark, came a soft humming, like a lullaby half remembered. Isabella's grip tightened on the candle. She whispered to herself, I opened it. Now I walk through it. She pulled back the cloth. And what she saw in the mirror wasn't her. The mirror revealed not Isabella, but something else. The reflection stared back with Isabella's eyes, her hair, her dress, yet every detail was off. Her skin was paler, lips too red, and her eyes completely black. The figure didn't mimic her movements. It watched her. Then it smiled. Isabella took a step back, her breath catching in her throat. The room around her remained still, but in the mirror, shadows danced like flame. Behind the reflection, other faces began to form, twisted, anguished, whispering things she couldn't understand. Who are you? Isabella whispered. The reflection spoke, but the voice wasn't hers. I am the one you buried. I am every truth your family erased. Then the figure began to cry, tears of ink sliding down her cheeks, staining the mirror. Suddenly, a gust of wind, though there were no windows, swept through the corridor. The candle blew out. Darkness. Isabella gasped. But then, light again. The candle relit itself. She was alone in front of the mirror once more, or so she thought. Behind her, footsteps, slow, barefoot. Tap, tap, tap. She didn't dare turn. Her reflection now stood completely still, lips moving again. She leaned forward to read them. "Don't look behind you." A chill ran through her spine, but her body, disobeying every instinct, turned anyway. Nothing, just empty corridor. But when she looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone, and so was her reflection. She placed her hand on the glass. It was cold, then suddenly warm, like a pulse beneath it. The mirror breathed, and it whispered again, "The truth is beneath. Go deeper." At the base of the mirror, the floor shifted. A staircase unfolded, spiraling downward into pitch blackness. Isabella knew this wasn't part of any architecture. She paused, then began to descend. With every step, the door above her closed tighter, and the darkness below grew louder. Each step Isabella took down the spiral staircase echoed unnaturally, like she was walking through someone else's heartbeat. The air grew thick, damp, metallic. The candle's flame bent backward, as if trying to flee from what lay below. As she descended, faint whispers returned, clearer now. She should not come. She must remember. The house does not forget. The walls were made of stone, but not like the house's foundation. These were ancient, carved with strange runes and claw-like scratches. Some symbols seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. Halfway down, she found a child's shoe, old, dusty, and stained. A name was etched on the inner sole. Margaret Fairmont, 1862. The candle flickered violently. The shadows on the walls danced in warning. But she didn't stop. At the base of the staircase, she reached a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron. No handle, only a slot shaped exactly like the serpent key. She hesitated, then inserted it. The door didn't open. Instead, a voice from behind whispered, "Do you really want to know?" She turned. No one. But her hand was already turning the key. Click. The door creaked open with a groan that sounded like a scream stifled by earth and time. Beyond it lay a vast underground chamber. Lanterns lit themselves one by one, revealing dozens of portraits, each one of women who looked like Isabella. An altar in the center, built from old stone, bones, and candle wax, and at the far end, a mural. Large, faded, but unmistakable. It showed a woman being buried alive by a group of masked figures. Her face was Isabella's. A large inscription in Latin loomed above the mural, burned into the stone, "Quod incipit in sanguine, finiet in sanguine." What was begun in blood shall end in blood. Suddenly, the door behind her slammed shut, locked, and from the altar came a soft thumping sound. Like something inside was trying to get out, Isabella stood frozen, staring at the ancient altar. The thumping sound grew louder, steady, like a heartbeat beneath the stone. It echoed through the chamber, vibrating through the soles of her feet. Thump, thump, thump. She slowly approached the altar, candle in one hand, the serpent key in the other. As she drew near, she noticed symbols carved around its edge. Some matched the ones she'd seen on the staircase. Others were unfamiliar, almost alive. Atop the altar lay a small, sealed book bound in black leather. A single word was branded into its cover, Testamentum. She reached out, and the moment her fingers touched the surface, the book pulsed warm, like a living thing. Suddenly, the whispering voices returned. Only now, they weren't whispers. They were screams. "Don't open it. You'll awaken her. Blood calls blood." Isabella's grip tightened. Something deep inside her, curiosity, defiance, maybe fate, demanded she open the book. She undid the clasp. The pages inside were old and crumbling, but as her eyes scanned the first lines, the text shifted from Latin to English. It was a journal, a confession, written by Genevieve Fairmont, her great-great-grandmother. I tried to stop it, but the ritual demands a daughter. Each generation, one must carry the curse. The entries were filled with despair, nightmares, blood, mirrors that didn't reflect, doors that opened by themselves. Then one line stood out, written in larger, darker script. She walks between, and one day she will return through her blood's vessel, when the key is turned. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the chamber. The lanterns dimmed. The mural began to bleed, thick red streaks dripping from the painted figure's eyes. Isabella turned to run, but the stone walls began shifting, rearranging themselves like a maze. Her path back was gone. Behind her, the altar began to crack open. Stone split like dry skin. Smoke poured out, and something began to rise. Not a body, not fully, but a shape. Long hair, hollow eyes, a smile too wide for a human face. It whispered, "Daughter of my blood." At last. The figure rising from the altar was cloaked in smoke, more spirit than flesh, but her presence was suffocating, cold, ancient, and absolute. Her voice echoed from everywhere at once. "You are the vessel, the door. The seal was broken the moment you turned the key." Isabella backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The walls had sealed her in, and the candle in her hand had died without a flame. Only the red glow from the bleeding mural illuminated the chamber now. The spirit's form began to solidify. She wore a tattered Victorian dress, identical to the one Isabella had seen in an old family portrait, the one everyone said was lost. Her name came unbidden to Isabella's lips, Isabella Fairmont. The spirit's grin widened. "You remember me? Good." Elowyn, the first daughter of the Fairmont line, rumored to have gone mad and vanished beneath the estate in 1789. But she hadn't vanished. She had been buried, alive, by her own family. "They feared me," Elowyn hissed, "because I saw through the veil, because I spoke to the shadows. But you, Isabella, you carry the gift. You opened the way." Isabella's hands trembled. "What do you want from me?" Elowyn's eyes narrowed. "To finish what was started. The ritual demands blood, but this time the vessel must choose. Open your veins willingly, or suffer the torment of centuries like I did." She reached out a hand, black veins snaking from her fingers. "One drop. That's all it takes. Then we'll be one. You'll see the truth behind the mirrors, and the world behind this one." The book in Isabella's hand began to burn, its pages curling into ash, revealing a hidden blade tucked inside the hollowed-out cover. As if it had always been waiting for her. "Cut yourself," the voice whispered from within. "Accept your place." But Isabella, trembling, heart racing, looked down at the blade and made a different deck. Ision. With a sudden cry, she turned and drove the blade into the altar instead. The spirit screamed, the chamber shook, the mural cracked wide open, revealing a passage. Hidden, breathing, waiting. The altar cracked down the middle like a broken rib, revealing a narrow stone passage, breathing slowly, like lungs expanding and contracting with the rhythm of something alive. Isabella stood at the edge, frozen. Behind her, the ghost of Elowyn let out one last screech before vanishing into a wisp of black smoke, sucked back into the altar's bleeding stone. The corridor pulsed with a faint red glow, as if lit by the heartbeat of the house itself. Isabella whispered to herself, This isn't architecture. This is anatomy. With the blade still in hand and the burning journal ashes in her pocket, she stepped inside. The walls were damp and warm, like the inside of a throat. As she moved forward, the floor beneath her feet felt less like stone and more like flesh. Every few steps she heard whispers, some crying, some laughing, some praying. And then she saw them. Eyes, set into the walls, watching her. Each eye blinked slowly as she passed. She forced herself forward. Suddenly, a gust of warm air hit her face, and the corridor opened into a circular chamber lined with mirrors. Each mirror showed a version of herself, one smiling, one crying, one covered in blood, one with completely black eyes, and in the center, a pedestal holding a child-sized mask made of porcelain. Isabella stepped forward cautiously. The moment she touched the mask, the mirrors began to shimmer. One by one, they changed, showing people she recognized from the journal: Genevieve, Elowen, other women stretching back centuries, each one screaming in silence behind the glass, their hands pressed against the inside of the mirrors, trapped. And then, Isabella saw something new. One mirror turned pitch black, and from within, a hand reached out. It gripped the edge of the mirror and pulled itself through. It was a creature, humanoid, but completely covered in cracked porcelain, like a doll assembled from broken souls. Its mouth hung open, but no jaw was visible. It tilted its head. Then, it mimicked her exact movements. Left hand up, it followed. Blink once, it did the same. But then Isabella stood still, and it kept moving. The creature stood before her, a broken mirror come to life. Its porcelain skin gleamed under the chamber's dim red light, each crack glowing faintly as if filled with embers. It moved in slow jerks, head twitching, fingers fluttering like marionette strings being pulled from somewhere deep within the house. Isabella didn't move, but the creature did. It began circling her, slowly, its footsteps echoing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Then it stopped and pointed at the pedestal where she had found the porcelain mask. Without warning, the chamber darkened. Each mirror began to flicker again, this time flashing memories. Isabella's own childhood, her mother's funeral, the moment she discovered the ledger in her husband's office, her first day at Fairmont House. The reflections twisted and blurred until she wasn't sure what was real and what had been inserted by the house. Then came a sound, a whisper from one of the mirrors. She wore the mask, so they wouldn't know it was her. Isabella turned to face the voice, and in that instant, the creature lunged. It collided with her, knocking her backward. But instead of attacking, it merged with her, phasing into her skin like smoke entering lungs. She screamed, not in pain, but in disorientation. A sharp ringing filled her ears, and for a brief moment she saw visions that weren't hers. A fire in a convent, a woman running through snow with blood on her gown, a ritual beneath a chapel, a man with black eyes writing names in a red ledger, and always the mask. When the ringing stopped, Isabella was lying on the chamber floor. But something had changed. She reached up to her face. The mask was gone. But her reflection in the mirror was still wearing it. She blinked. The reflection didn't. She turned her head left. The reflection tilted right. Suddenly, the mirrors began cracking one by one, each side hattering outward toward her like a warning. From behind, a voice whispered directly into her ear. "You took her place. Now they'll come for you." Isabella turned. No one was there. But the mask had returned, this time resting in her hands. The mask in Isabella's hands felt heavier now, as if soaked with centuries of sorrow. Its smooth porcelain had changed, new cracks had appeared, and at the edges, faint etchings, names carved in looping cursive. She looked closer. Genevieve, Elowen, Margaret, Cecilia. Then, Isabella. Her name was already there. A chill sliced down her spine. How could it be? I'm still alive. But in Fairmont House, being alive didn't matter. The house had a way of rewriting stories, bending memory, swallowing names, and replacing them with roles. As she walked forward, the chamber behind her crumbled, mirrors shattering until nothing remained but darkness. A new hallway opened ahead, this one made of bookshelves. Hundreds of dusty volumes lined both sides. The ceiling disappeared into endless black. No lamps, no torches, and yet the pages glowed faintly. She pulled a random book from the shelf. It was titled The Disappearance of Isabella Fairmont. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through. There were drawings, detailed sketches of her face, the dress she had worn that day in 1889, the way she had smiled. But the ending was wrong. It didn't say she vanished. It said she was buried alive in the East Wing. It said she screamed for 3 days before going silent. It said her soul had been traded for a place in the family's eternal pact. Isabella dropped the book. More books fell around her like dominoes, each one telling her story from a different angle. In one, she was a murderer. In another, a witch. In another still, a sacrificial lamb. Not a single volume told the truth she remembered. She cried out, "I am not a story," and the house responded. The shelves trembled, books flew open, the pages turned in rapid succession, voices rising like a storm. "You are what we make of you." Suddenly, the ground beneath her began to sink, swallowing her like quicksand. She clutched the mask to her chest as the bookshelves collapsed inward. One final page fluttered past her. The one who wears the mask is never seen again. As darkness engulfed her once more, a door appeared in front, blood red, carved with symbols. It bore no handle, only a single word. Choose. The red door stood tall, pulsing slightly, as if it were alive. There was no handle, no lock, just a single word carved into its center. Choose. Isabella reached out and touched the surface. It was warm. The moment her fingers brushed the wood, a jolt surged through her arm, and the symbols around the word began to glow. Ancient runes, some Latin, others from languages she'd never seen. Then a voice echoed, but not from behind the door, from within her mind. 2 paths, 1 truth, 1 lie. One will set you free. The other will become your legacy. The door split in 2, creaking open into twin hallways, both wrapped in shadow. To the left, the path glowed faintly blue. The air smelled of lavender and old parchment. Soft humming could be heard, like a lullaby echoing through a cathedral. To the right, the hallway burned dimly red. A metallic tang hung in the air, iron, blood, and smoke. The sound of sobbing came from far down the hall. Isabella stood frozen. Each step now wasn't just forward. It was a declaration, a rewriting of who she was. She looked to her left. A portrait hung near the entrance. It was her, but not quite. This Isabella was older, regal, dressed in priestess robes, holding a candle. Beneath the portrait, she chose wisdom. Then to the right, another portrait. Same face, but colder. Masked, the eyes empty. Beneath it, she chose power. Isabella clutched the porcelain mask tighter. Was she being asked to choose between truth and illusion, or between sacrifice and survival? As she stood there, the mask began to heat up in her hands, glowing faintly. It was reacting. She lifted it and held it close. The mirrors around her whispered in unison, "Which Isabella are you?" Suddenly, her reflection appeared again, split in two, each side mirroring one path. On the left, her eyes were tearful, human. On the right, they burr, Ned red, unrecognizable. She took one final breath and stepped forward. But the moment her foot crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind her. Darkness swallowed everything, and a deep voice whispered, "You have chosen. Now face what follows." The hallway Isabella had chosen narrowed as she walked. The red glow faded into complete black, yet somehow she could still see, but not through her eyes. The mask had awakened. She placed it gently over her face, and the world shifted. Her heartbeat slowed, the silence grew dense, and then she saw them. Ghostly echoes trailing along the walls, scenes from the past burned into the stone. A girl, running. A man, watching. A contract, signed in blood. And the house, being built piece by piece, not by human hands, but by something older. At the end of the corridor stood a massive stone chair, and in it, a figure cloaked in black velvet, face hidden beneath a hood. Long skeletal fingers rested on the arms of the throne. As Isabella stepped closer, the figure spoke without moving. Isabella Fairmont, the girl who vanished, yet never left. She held her ground. "Who are you?" The figure's voice was both man and woman, both ancient and newborn. "I am the one who wrote the first name in this house, and the last. I am the architect of shadows." The chamber around them pulsed, walls breathing in and out like lungs. Candles flickered to life, revealing portraits of women, dozens of them, some familiar, some forgotten. All of them chose, all of them wore the mask, all of them became something new. Isabella looked closer. Every woman in the portraits looked like her. Her throat tightened. "Why me?" The architect leaned forward, and the hood slipped slightly, revealing no face, only swirling smoke. "Because you're the only one who ever resisted, the only one who dared to ask why. That makes you dangerous, or divine." The mask on Isabella's face began to crack, lines crawling like vines, spreading faster with each breath. "You want the truth, child?" the architect whispered. "Then you must go deeper, to the place even I cannot see." Suddenly, the Ji-Tao round below her dissolved, and she fell. Down, down, past time, past memory, past reality. Falling into the one place no story had ever returned from. The heart of the house. Isabella awoke to silence, not the silence of peace, but of absence. No wind, no breath, no time. She lay at the center of a circular room made of black stone. Above her, the ceiling stretched into darkness. Around her, 12 archways, each carved with a single name, none of which she recognized. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it something pulsed. A heart, not a symbol, not a drawing, an actual beating heart, suspended in air, wrapped in silver chains, glowing faintly blue with every pulse. It beat slowly, unnaturally, as if it were trying not to wake something up, and carved into the floor beneath it, in a circle of ancient runes, "The house lives through her." Isabella stood. Her body ached, her head spun, but the mask, it was gone. In its place, a scar now burned across her cheek, the mark of someone who had seen too much. As she stepped toward the heart, a low voice echoed from the archways. Not one voice, but many. "She is not the first. She is not the last. but she is the only one to reach this far. The air grew thick. Shadows began pouring from the archways, forming figures with no faces, just mouths whispering truths. The house was built to protect a secret, and to punish anyone who dared find it. You were born here, Isabella. You belong to it. She shook her head. No, I don't belong to anyone. The whispers screamed in unison, as if offended by her defiance. The heart beat faster. Then, without warning, the chains snapped. The heart fell to the floor, but didn't stop beating. Instead, it began to crawl toward her. Drip, drag, thump, drip, drag, thump. And from one of the archways stepped a figure she thought she'd never see again. Her father. But he was wrong, taller, hollow, and with eyes that did not belong to a human anymore. He smiled. You wanted the truth, daughter? Then come, hold the heart. Accept what you are. Isabella stood frozen. Before her was the man who once carried her on his shoulders, who kissed her forehead good-night, now a puppet draped in human memory. His eyes were black, his smile stretched, and yet some part of him remained. You were never missing, he said softly. You were chosen. The heart continued crawling toward her feet, leaving behind a glowing trail of blue veins across the stone floor, like roots claiming the room. Isabella's voice cracked. What do you mean? Chosen for what? Her father, or whatever wore his skin, stepped aside, revealing an ancient mirror behind him. But it wasn't glass. It shimmered like mercury, pulsing with light. Inside, images flickered. Her mother, pregnant and weeping. Her father, kneeling in a circle, blood on his palms. A figure cloaked in white, placing a small, writhing child into a silver cradle. The child had no shadow. Isabella gasped. That's me. You were born under contract, he said, to carry what no one else could, the final heir of the House of Echoes, the last vessel, the perfect one. The room responded to his words. Portraits of ancient women lit up on the surrounding walls, all bearing Isabella's eyes. Each generation failed, he whispered. They ran, fought, hid, but you embraced the mystery. You asked questions. You chose to descend. She shook her head, but her hands trembled. The heart pulsed harder now, attaching itself to her shadow. Every beat matched her pulse. Her blood felt thick, heavier, as if something inside her had awakened, or returned. What does it want from me? She asked, her voice trembling. It doesn't want you, Isabella, her father said, stepping closer. It is you. Her knees buckled. All the dreams, all the whispers, all the reflections that didn't match. They weren't signs of madness. They were memories, from the heart she had always carried, hidden, waiting. Suddenly, her skin began to glow faintly, not from light, but from something beneath it. The room dimmed. There is still time to accept your fate, her father said, or reject it, and watch the house consume itself, and you with it. The heart leapt into her hands. Now the choice was hers. The heart rested in her palms, warm, heavy, and unnaturally alive. Its every beat echoed through her veins. Not just sound, but memory. Images surged into her mind. She saw her mother whispering a lullaby, tears in her eyes. She saw the contract, the pact sealed in blood before her birth. She saw herself, again and again, standing in this very room at different ages, making the same choice, and always forgetting. This wasn't her first time here. She had been reborn, pulled back by the house each time she refused her destiny. This was her last chance. Her father, or the echo of him, stood at the archway. "Say your true name," he whispered. "Let the house claim you." But Isabella clenched her jaw. "You want me to surrender. I won't." The mirror flickered behind her, now showing a new version of her, powerful, glowing, commanding the house like a queen of shadows. A voice echoed from the heart. "You are the lock and the key." A sudden quake shook the room. The runes on the floor began to split and rearrange, forming a new message: choose, rule, or ruin. Isabella closed her eyes. Her heartbeat, the house's heartbeat, the heart in her hands. All the same rhythm. She lifted the heart high. "If this place lives through me, then it ends with me." The heart burst into flame, not red, but pure white fire. It didn't burn her. It freed her. The shadowed figures screamed. Portraits shattered. The walls bled black mist. Even her father's form fractured into 1,000 moths, vanishing into the dark. The house roared like a beast in agony. And then, silence. The mirror cracked. Isabella looked at her reflection. This time, it mirrored her exactly. For the first time, she knew who she was. Not the heir, not the vessel, but the breaker of the chain. The moment Isabella stepped out of the ruined manor, the world didn't feel the same. The sky looked paler. The wind no longer carried birdsong. Even the trees leaned away from her, their branches curling inward like afraid fingers. She clutched her coat tighter, though the cold came from within, not the air. The house had died, but something had escaped with her. Behind her, what remained of Fairmont Manor was now just a pile of scorched stone, smoldering faintly under a silver sky. The once tall spires were now ash. The great mirror, gone. Even the path she had walked on to enter had vanished. And yet, her shadow stretched longer than it should have, even in the gray daylight. At the town's edge, no one remembered her. The old librarian stared blankly. The children who once played near the iron gate avoided her eyes. Even the cats, the ones that always followed her before, hissed and ran. Something was wrong. Isabella entered her childhood home. It looked untouched, but wrong. Dust floated in slow motion. Time felt thick. Her old bedroom door creaked open by itself. Inside, on her bed, was a single item, her childhood diary. She hadn't seen it in years. She opened it slowly, and to her horror, it was completely full, all in her handwriting. But she hadn't written any of it. Day 41. The heart still whispers when I sleep. Day 78. The town is beginning to see me. I must hide again. Day 120. They don't remember me, but the mirror always does. Tears welled up in her eyes. "What is this?" she whispered. "When did I write these?" Suddenly, the final page flipped on its own. Fresh ink bled onto the paper. Day 121. She's reading now. She thinks she's free. She's not. The lamp flickered. Isabella stood, and in the mirror on the far wall, her reflection remained seated and smiled. Isabella froze. Her reflection, still sitting, still smiling, blinked once, and in that blink it aged a little, just a flicker. But she saw it, the same eyes, not hers. "What are you?" Isabella whispered. The reflection tilted its head, mocking. It raised its hand slowly and dragged a finger across its throat, a threat or a promise. She backed away. The diary dropped from her hand, pages fluttering open like wings of a dying bird. The final entry now read, "She knows." The mirror began to pulse with a strange light, soft, blue-white, like moonlight underwater. Was this mirror from the house, Or had the house always been here? She remembered what the portrait had once said. She was always in the frame, just never in focus. Suddenly, her own memories began to blur. She remembered being 5 years old, watching herself sleep. She remembered being 12, but only from behind her own eyes, like watching a film. She remembered the first time she saw a mirror crack, and how she laughed instead of screamed. Have I ever been just me? A knock echoed through the house, once, then again. Not from the front door, from the mirror. 3 taps now, soft, rhythmical, deliberate. Then the glass rippled, and the reflection stood up. But Isabella hadn't moved. The air grew heavier, colder. Her breath fogged the glass, but the figure on the other side didn't fog at all. "You're not real," Isabella whispered. The reflection smirked. "Neither are you." Suddenly, the lights went out. In the darkness, the only thing glowing was the mirror, and the reflection's eyes. They began to bleed ink-black tears, dripping upward. Then the voice came, soft, but everywhere. "One of us must vanish, but only one of us knows how." The reflection raised a hand, beckoning her forward. "Come inside, Isabella. Let's finish this." Isabella stood at the edge of her own reflection, heart pounding like distant drums in an empty valley. The mirror shimmered like water, not quite solid, not quite dream. The version of her on the other side tilted its head as if listening to something she couldn't hear. "Step in," it whispered. "Only one of us gets to stay." Behind her, the house creaked, not in decay, in anticipation. She could feel it, something in the walls, in the floorboards, in the air, waiting for her choice. This wasn't just a haunted house. This was a ritual. Isabella reached out a hand. The glass rippled like the surface of a dark lake, cold wrapped around her fingers like a snake's breath. "What happens if I enter?" she asked. The reflection shrugged, but its eyes gleamed. "Then you become real, or I do." The rules weren't clear. But when had they ever been? She remembered all the things that hadn't made sense. The townspeople forgetting her. The diary entries she never wrote. The portraits that aged backwards. Maybe this wasn't about her being haunted. Maybe she was never supposed to exist. A sudden thought struck her. What if I'm the echo? What if the reflection is the original? Lightning flashed outside. For just a second, the mirror showed dozens of Isabellas lined up behind the glass, some crying, some screaming, some silent. Then gone. She felt herself swaying, not from fear, but from pull. The mirror wanted her. Suddenly, the reflection's smile dropped. "Decide," it snapped. "They're coming." A sound like footsteps, but upside down, echoed from inside the mirror. Isabella made her choice. She stepped forward. The cold hit her chest, then her face, then silence. She blinked. Now, she was inside the mirror. The other Isabella stood outside now, watching her, and smiling. Isabella screamed, but no sound came. Outside the glass, the other Isabella whispered, "Thank you for trading places." Then she turned and walked away. Everything was silent, but not peaceful. Inside the mirror, Isabella stood in a warped version of the house, like it had been rebuilt from memory, but someone got the details wrong. The walls bled ink instead of mold, the chandeliers dangled upside down, and portraits whispered in languages she almost understood. She turned toward the glass surface behind her, where she'd come from. On the other side stood the other her, the reflection, now fully alive, smiling, breathing, wearing her body like a perfect dress. "Let me out," Isabella mouthed, but the mirror swallowed sound like a grave. No one could hear her here. She was inside a memory, or maybe a prison built from forgotten thoughts. The diary appeared in her hand, but now the pages were blank, except one line scratched deep in blood-red ink. You took her place. Now take her pain. Suddenly, the floor rippled like water and hands began to rise, pale, broken, familiar hands. Isabella backed away. Each hand belonged to another version of herself, dozens of Isabellas who had once made the same choice. Some begged silently, some screamed without mouths, some just stared at her, hollow and resigned. Was she the last, or just the latest? She ran through the mirror house, but every door led back to the same room. Time didn't work here. Nothing aged, nothing healed, nothing escaped. Then, in the mirror wall ahead, she saw something new. A child. A little girl with dark curls and bruised eyes. She looked exactly like Isabella had at age 7. The child raised her hand and wrote on the fogged mirror, "You were never real." Isabella's knees buckled. Was this the truth? Had she always been the shadow, the echo, the dream? She slammed her fists against the glass. Outside, the new Isabella danced in her place. She laughed with people. She lived. Inside, Isabella's scream shattered too. He glass, but it only reformed. Faster this time. The prison was self-repairing, a house of forgotten selves. Inside the mirror world, time moved like smoke, drifting without form, without end. Isabella sat beneath the twisted staircase, the diary in her lap. Her fingers were cold. Her reflection no longer mirrored her. Outside, the other Isabella now lived her life. She had taken over with ease, smiling, charming, even crying when needed. No one suspected, because maybe no one remembered the real Isabella anymore. Or maybe she had never existed. The thought festered. What if I was the ghost all along? The child in the mirror, the younger version, appeared again. But now she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a woman in black, veiled and silent. Her presence was ancient, older than memory, older than the house. She reached toward Isabella, touching the diary. The pages flipped violently, revealing what had always been hidden. Words formed. You are the memory of a girl who died here in 1889. The real Isabella Fairmont vanished. You were created from the grief. Isabella's breath hitched. Created? By who? The woman spoke, finally, her voice like wind through dead leaves. By the house. The house had memory. The house had sorrow. And the house had rebuilt Isabella again and again, each version trying to escape, to exist, to be real. But none could, because none truly were. Suddenly, everything made sense. The flickering mirrors, the townsfolk forgetting her name, the diary writing itself. She wasn't the first. She wouldn't be the last. The mirror world shimmered again, showing a new girl arriving at the manor gates. A young traveler, alone, curious. And just like always, the door would open for her. The house would welcome her grief. And another Isabella would be born. Inside the mirror, the trapped Isabellas watched in silence, their eyes full of pain and recognition. The woman in black turned away. Isabella whispered her final words. Tell her. Tell the next one. To run. But the house never warned them, because the house wanted a story, and it always got one, even if it had to build the girl from shadows.